Welcome everybody to the Wednesday talk at Metta Center. Today again we have Bhante Ananda. We are continuing the Brahmavihara series for July, and this is going to be the last Brahmavihara, and the talk title is Upekkha as a factor of enlightenment. Bhante Ananda is online with us. I think he has a different format today. Bhante, did I hear you correctly?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, okay. So
no, it's quite similar. I think we were going to go for half an hour meditation. Well, 25 minutes, half an hour.
50. So meditation,
However,
that is, yeah.
However,
And then we will wrap it up with Q&A and sharing of merits.
Yes. Sounds good. Okay, so welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you all again. And so I invite you to take a comfortable position if it's not already done. And just relax your eyes, relax your whole body. Your posture is not so important as much as how comfortable you feel, how at ease you are. Perhaps keeping your back relatively straight is a good idea. And just relax your whole body. Closing your eyes. Allowing any tension or tightness, any white noise that could have accumulated throughout your day to slowly wash away and soften, melt away. And notice how good just doing this feels, just relaxing, closing your eyes, viveka, letting go, detaching. And smile when you feel the relief. The smile helps us attune with the relief, the relaxing, easing into letting go. Easing into presence. You might notice all the little activities in your body, all the little sensations and blood going, heartbeat racing, starts to slowly calm down. And interestingly, so does the mind, starts to calm down. Perhaps you might feel your awareness trickling down into your whole body, less into mental activities, but more in sensations here and now. Presence with yourself, this body. Feeling grounded. Whenever you feel like you've calmed down quite a bit and you feel at ease, your field of awareness is not as narrow, it's more open, receptive, welcoming. The heart is more open, welcoming. Then you can remember the feeling of love, the feeling of loving kindness. This feeling of warmth, of radiance inside your chest, around your heart, to help the feeling along. You can remember a time when you were happy. Perhaps you spent time with someone you really like, or somewhere you really enjoy. A happy memory. And when this happy, loving feeling arises, smile. And you can help the feeling along with some phrases like, may I be happy. May I be peaceful and calm. May I be able to feel love here and now. And really feeling the feeling of loving kindness. In your body, perhaps your spine tingles or your hands get warm. Perhaps it's that feeling that makes your cheek blush. Allowing it to course through your whole body. Genuinely feeling loving kindness. That feeling that you feel perhaps when you hold a puppy or a kitten, a baby. That instant awe and love that we can feel. And if this is helpful to you, you can also choose a friend. We call the spiritual friend, Kalyanamitta. A friend for whom you have a lot of love and respect, for who you admire their good qualities, for whom you have pure kind of love, which is not romantic, and for whom you don't really have any underlying issues with. And you can take that spiritual friend, can be anyone, and see them beaming with happiness. And place them in your heart. Surround them with your love. And sincerely wish them well. Maybe using sentences like, may you be happy. May you always have everything that you need in life on your journey. Genuinely feeling that loving kindness. one way that can be helpful is to see them happy and see them loving and to resonate with them, to resonate in their happiness and their love. To join them. In joy. In love. And just learn to relax into this beautiful feeling of loving kindness. And sooner or later, your mind will go away, it will wander. And that's fine. It's just the old habit of the mind. Just recognize the mind is gone. And you were meditating, but now you're thinking of something else. And there's a little bit of tension in the mind, in the body. So just recognize this. Release the distraction in your mind. Let it be there on its own. Simply stop feeding it your awareness, and it will stop growing. So release that. And relax the tension that's accumulated in the body. And feel the expansiveness as you relax. Feel the mind getting looser and vaster, wider, more present, more stable. Notice the relief and smile again. Re-smile. Enjoy that relief. Viveka jam piti sukham. And return or rest back into loving kindness for your spiritual friend. Or perhaps if you feel like the feeling is easier to just radiate in all directions, then allowing it to be like that. Simple. And noticing as the process of right effort goes on, as we cultivate the wholesome metta and release or relax any distractions, smiling, the body and the mind processes really calm down. Awareness is starting to pool, becomes collected. This happy, collected awareness naturally translates into steadiness of mind, balance, stability. Allowing the mind to simplify, to become lighter, to relax. And to enjoy this fresh mental steadiness, this newly acquired poise, balance of mind. Which will be our topic for today. And so slowly allowing your senses to come back online, welcoming the flux of your experience, the sound of my voice, the room in which you are, chair you're sitting on. Slowly opening up your eyes. Enjoying the freshness of the moment. So hi again, everybody. It's good to see you all. Thank you for being here, for having me. And so today, we will be talking about the exciting topic of equanimity, if you get the pun. And so I think it's quite interesting that the name of the talk is actually directing us towards the factors of awakening, because I think that's a very important aspect to understand if we want to understand Upekkha, equanimity, in Buddhist terms. And so I think equanimity is obviously quite important in the Buddha's teaching. I think everybody will somewhat agree with this. A lot of meditation practice, most meditation practice, put a lot of emphasis on equanimity as part of their instructions in one way or another. We hear of equanimity in many aspects of the Buddha's teaching, in the Eightfold Path. And I think as I was reflecting upon Upekkha, I've been realizing that, in fact, this was quite central to my entire spiritual journey and quest for understanding meditation as the Buddha taught it. And this quest that I was on through many different kinds of practices and experiencing different kinds of equanimity, experiencing different kinds of samadhis, different kinds of equanimities, Upekkha. And so this journey was quite interesting and mind-opening in many ways. And I think I'm quite happy to be talking about this tonight with all of you, because this is quite an essential topic in Buddhism, and I feel like it's one of the most misunderstood and also easy to understand when we understand it properly. It's simply, it actually is quite a wonderful process to go through to develop this equanimity that is niramisa, that the Buddha would say, that is beyond worldly, that is connected with the higher mind, basically. And so as I was looking into ideas of how to approach this topic, I actually stumbled upon another poem. And last time I ended with a beautiful poem from from Naomi Shihab Nye on kindness and compassion. And today I would like to actually reverse this and open with a poem which in my work and translations of the Pali texts, I spend a lot of time in the thesaurus in the dictionary of synonyms, because I find that to understand a word properly, synonyms are like little bits of meaning that are surrounding that word, which can give you a lot of insights on the actual meaning of certain words. And I always found that in the translations that we have today, which are wonderful, but sometimes in my own work, what I've noticed is that for many different Pali names or words, we use the same English word, even though the Pali words are different. And so we end up with a very narrow kind of taste or understanding of what these words can mean. And I really enjoyed this writing here, this poem, because it's very descriptive and it uses a lot of and the format that is being used is quite interesting, because it's the name of it is not quiet as in quiet, but, and then it goes on to list a whole bunch of different ways that how you can understand the word quiet. And it's really interesting because I felt like this is how I feel about Upekkha also. Upekkha has 1,000 shades of it, and it has a lot of different things that it can hide also. And so there's different kinds of Upekkha, which we will be talking about later in the discourse. And then we'll see each of these two kinds of Upekkha, what it means, and then how to develop, obviously, the wholesome kind. But I just thought this was a very interesting description of the word quiet, which is really close to actually equanimity. And then we can have a little bit of a reflection together about this. So this is a poem by Victoria Adukwe-Bulley. And it says, not quiet as in quiet, but as in peaceful, as in slow to anger, as in shy, as in sulking or sullen, as in nice, as in clean tree-lined streets, as in well-resourced libraries, as in good, outstanding schools, as in not much new, as in no news is good news, as in the war is over, has been for decades now, as in early to bed, curled up with a book, as in the newborn is sleeping, as in TV barely audible, as in subtitles, as in subtext, as in someone should have done something, as in don't just do something, stand there, as in could and should but wouldn't, as in, well, the British are so polite, as in placid, as in placated, as in nuanced, complicated, as in careful, it's a conflict, not a siege, a conflict, as in objective, as in both sides, as in well-behaved, as in safe, as in too quiet, as in almost silent, as in almost no sirens. Now you might be wondering where I'm going with this. And actually, when I read this, I thought, wow, this is actually exactly what I think of equanimity. Because in my journey, I've noticed that equanimity can be a lot of different things, and it can be wholesome things, and it can also be unwholesome things. So it can be used as a disguise for certain qualities we can use that as a blanket to cover up things. Or we can use it as the beginning points it to, as in slow to anger, as in peaceful, as in truly a mind that is developed and steady. And so the many faces of equanimity, I thought was a really interesting topic. And I would like to perhaps, before we go into a greater depth into this, I'd like to hear from people here, what does the word upekha, or equanimity, in the way that you understand it in Buddhism, how do you see it, and what word would you use that would describe this the most accurately for you? It would be really interesting to hear a few different perspectives. Peaceful. Yes, very good.
Unmoved.
You can write in the chat also, that's okay.
And unmoved.
Balanced, neutral, yes. So content, yeah, very good. Calm, peace, calm and balanced, not stressed. Well done. We got to look up from Bharat here. Good. Acceptance, yeah, very good. Not separate, not separate, yeah, good. Still. Wow, we have a lot of wisdom in this group. I have to tell you this much. That's really interesting. Yes, so thank you for sharing all these really good ideas. How do I, okay, I'll just leave it like this. And so I'd like to share, Bharat, is it possible to share my screen?
Absolutely, should be possible now.
Okay. So how do I do this?
Share screen?
Yeah. Well, that's okay. This might be a little too technological for me right now, but I was trying to spice it up today, but I guess it's not going to be for today. I had this, I got a screenshot for everybody from the Pali English dictionary so that we could have a look into a little bit what that dictionary is saying, and maybe understand a little bit more around. We can define a little bit more why is equanimity got termed in this way, and what the flavor of equanimity or upekha has in for people that are translating, and for those who are interested in the actual meaning of that word. And here we have, for example, in the adjective, we have upekkha, which makes it kind of an adjective. And we have disinterested, we have resigned, we have stoical. We have, for example, in as a verb, upekkati, to look on. So that's, now we're getting on to more like the etymology, because upekha means iksha, and iksha means to see, to look, and upa is on or upon. And so this compound kind of means like looking on and on looking, or this is where we find this. This is why I call it, as a support of awakening, I call it steadiness of mind, which I prefer to equanimity, because for me, I feel like the succession of the 7 supports of awakening culminate into more steadiness of mind, steadiness of awareness, and which translates also into more awareness. So this whole cycle turns, and we'll see it later on. But we also have here to be disinterested, indifferent. So that's interesting. And Upekkha itself is around the same lines. Hedonic neutrality or indifference, 0 point between joy and sorrow. So I just wanted to put this out here because all of your answers for me are actually more close to the actual meaning of Upekkha than when I read the Pali English dictionary. And so I just wanted to bring this up because this is a problem. Now, the one of the things that I've discovered over the years is that this equanimity that I was being taught or told seemed to be very kind of grim and very plain and neutral, and it was kind of like placed upon me. It was put upon me. It's like you have a lot of pain in your practice, you just be equanimous. But the thing is that only lasts for so long. And as when we don't know how to deal with wisdom, with these sensations, with these situations, and let them go, not associating with them, like really understanding what's going on, what the process is, then we're not really understanding the process of how the 7 supports of awakening lead to steadiness of mind. And then this can become quite grim, quite plain. So from here, I think one of the most interesting places where we find this word equanimity is also, I feel, where we find the real meaning of it. And so one of the things that I do a lot when I translate is I not only look at this particular word in the dictionary, but I also try to find and think of where does that word come up and where is this found, because that's where the meaning is. It's when we see it in its natural kind of place that we can understand what it means. And so Upekkha comes in obviously a lot of places in the suttas, but it mainly comes up as the 7th support of awakening, the factor of enlightenment. So we start with sati, awareness, dhamma vichaya, which is investigation of states, that is basically right effort. Virya, which is continual effort, which I like to call devotion. And then we have joy that arises from this continual practice. And then relaxation, tranquility, everything calms down. Then the mind becomes, that was passaddhi. And then the minds become collected, samadhi. And then there is upekkha, which is that steadiness of mind, that balance of mind, which also translates again into more awareness, basically. So it feeds, it's a self-feeding feedback loop. And then we find it obviously in the Brahmaviharas, and it's at the end of the 4 Brahmaviharas. And so that's another interesting feature where we find equanimity, because the Buddha never starts with upekkha. He always starts with loving kindness, karuna, compassion, then mudita, sympathetic joy. And then once these 3 states have been developed and cultivated, he talks about upekkha. And so this is, again, interesting. And another place where we find it coming up over and over again is definitely in the sequence of the levels of meditation, the jhanas, as the 3rd and the 4th jhana. And so in mainly in those areas is where we find equanimity most often. We also have this practice of patikula, we call it, repulsiveness, practicing being unrepelled by what is repelling, being repelled by what is unrepelling, and these 4 ways that we can do it. And so that we develop a steady, calm mind. And I think Kong was talking about this on the first discourse of this series. Okay, so and then we further on, we also have this notion in the suttas, and that is where I want to kind of direct most of our attention for now, is that there are 2 kinds of equanimity. Like there are 2 kinds of joy, and there are 2 kinds of happiness, and there are 2 kinds of equanimity. And this is, I'm basically paraphrasing a sutta that is in the Samyutta Nikaya, the connected discourses, in the chapter on sensations. It's number 31, I believe. It's called high-minded, or niramisa. And so basically that's a discourse where the Buddha explains this kind of principle where we find a kind of joy, happiness, and equanimity that is based on samisa, which is kind of worldly, mundane, that is connected to the senses. And so basically, whenever we have this kind of a kind of joy that arises from, I don't know, any kind of sensory stimulation, well, then that is part of that. It's not that it's completely bad or something like that, but it's very ephemeral, and it's different than the joy that we develop through the higher mind, the cultivation of wholesome states through right effort. And contrasting with that is basically niramisa piti, the high-minded joy, the high-minded happiness, and the high-minded equanimity, which is not connected with the senses, but which is connected with wholesome mental development. And so when we cultivate the Brahmaviharas, for example, when we cultivate the smile, then the mind becomes uplifted, and we let go, release, relax all the distractions that arise. Then the mind becomes pure, it becomes bright naturally. And then it goes through the sequence of the levels of meditation. So at the beginning, there's this joy and relief and happiness that comes from letting go. Viveka jang piti sukkang. And that is this high-minded joy. That is where we find it. And then we find it in the second level also, which comes from more like samadhi. Now, as the mind lets go and lets go, viveka, then this sense of samadhi, the sense of collectedness gathers, and this is even more relieving and blissful. And there's quite a bit of joy arising, feeding the whole process. And then at the third level of meditation, we have this calming down of the stronger joy for an even better sensation, which is closer to equanimity, closer to mental steadiness, to poise. And these are words that I like to use more than equanimity. In fact, for the 7 supports of awakening would be steadiness of mind. For the Brahmaviharas, I call it calm or poise, mental poise, because I feel like radiating boundless calm for me is something more tangible. It's something I can produce more easily than radiating steadiness of mind. But it's all feeding each other. It's not, one is not bad or anything. It's just different perspectives, which I found personally helpful And so, and at the fourth level of meditation, at the third, we start to have a bit of a preview of what the bliss of Upekkha can be like. And then at the fourth level of meditation, the mind is very, very stable, it's very steady, and it's very clear. And this kind of equanimity is very different from the equanimity that we could take as indifference or disinterest, basically. So we really have to parse these two things out. When we talk about equanimity or upekkha in the Buddha's teaching, we really are talking about a very wholesome kind and a high-minded kind of equanimity, of mental calm or poise, which has nothing to do with unwholesome qualities and the equanimity that comes from the senses. Anybody would have, that was kind of interesting when I started thinking about this, what kind of equanimity that can arise from the senses. What are you guys thinking? Or you can write it in the chat also. That's a bonus question.
Anybody has any thoughts on that?
It's a tough question. I had to think about it for a while. I'm only going to share my discoveries once I have at least 3 tentatives. This was hard work. Mostly mind. Yeah, so actually in the sensory equanimity and joy and happiness, the samisa piti, the Buddha talks about only 5 senses. So the ear, the eyes, the nose, the tongue, the body. And he basically does not talk about the mind because he puts the mental kind aside and talks about the high-minded equanimity, high-minded joy and happiness. Okay, this is hard in Australia. It's getting late. I'm only in midday here, so I'll give you some perspectives. Maybe I was thinking, well, maybe that's the thing that you can feel when you come from a long day's work and you just sit on the couch and turn on Netflix. Maybe that's kind of, does that sound familiar? I've done that. I'm fully guilty many years ago. But that's one thing I could relate to, joy. Yeah. And so
share with us.
I was thinking of maybe like one word for the sensory equanimity is just non-labeling. So it's just hearing, seeing, smelling and tasting, but not actually putting any labeling on any of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, anything that pertains to, like, if it comes from the senses, then yeah, it is definitely this kind of sensory equanimity. The other thing I could think of is, has anybody here ever gotten a really good hour-long massage? How do you feel after a really good hour, 45-minute massage? Feels pretty good. Mine is pretty equanimous and you're feeling really comfortable in the body. And so that's actually it's actually quite wholesome. It's not that it's unwholesome, but the thing is that it's very temporary and it's very impermanent, and it doesn't come through really wisdom. It's just something that happens to us, to the body, somebody who's either really kind to you or getting paid will spend some time easing your body, and then the mind also eases down. And that's one way that I could think we could feel a kind of mundane kind of equanimity. And so but also branching out of that, I thought there's a little bit more here than this. And since last time we were talking about compassion and empathy, well, there's actually an equanimity that sprouts out from like mental conditions. There are mental conditions which actually, like apathy, which are completely opposite to wholesome states. There's an incapacity of feeling positive emotions or emotions at all and resonating with people. And so this kind of equanimity also exists, and it's also an actual condition. And so there's not only the sensory kind of equanimity, but there's a really vast spectrum. And so I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but when you meet someone and they're very kind of detached and equanimous, and you think, oh, maybe this person's really wise. And then maybe sometime later when you get to know them a little bit better, then you're like, oh, maybe not as much as I thought. So has that ever happened to anybody here? Yeah, maybe a nod of the head, that's enough. Good. Yeah, so that's happened to me a few times, and that was a good reflection also, where I thought, well, yeah, this equanimity can have a lot of disguises. It can cover up things, and so it's not necessarily wholesome. But now shifting gears, on how and where do we find this beautiful equanimity that we are looking forward to develop, which is kind of like the crown jewel in the Buddha's teaching. So many traditions and teachings, it all kind of culminates in this Upekkha, in this steadiness of mind, in this clear, calm, composed mind. And so for me, I was told in previous practices that I've tried many meditation practices, and one of the instructions that I got once was to just basically being equanimous to any kind of sensations that I would have. And I would go through a lot of pain, and I actually learned to shut it out. I actually learned to shut the pain away, and which was kind of useful. But it's like putting a bunch of monsters in the closet. And so you kind of have to keep them there and push on the door all the time and kind of lock them away. But as soon as you kind of release and relax and let go of that, then the door burst open, and with even more force. And so in my own journey, I had a lot of times where I was wondering, well, what is the meaning of all that? And how do I actually develop something that is durable, that is really sustainable, that will last for a long time? And also I was told to not be attached to the joy. So that was a double whammy. But here, I just wanted to bring this wonderful sequence to all of you tonight, which is found throughout a few suttas, and it is found in the Anapanasati Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, the middle length discourses. It is found in the section where the Buddha says that the Anapanasati fulfills the 4 satipatthanas, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, but also that fulfills the 7 supports of awakening. And this is one of the most accurate breakdown of how the 7 supports of awakening work really tangibly here and now for our practice, so that we can apply it in our day-to-day life and in our practice. And I found this sequence one of the most helpful sequence in the whole suttas to understand the practice. And this is, I just want to kind of bridge, because the Anapanasati Sutta is kind of loaded with a lot of different interpretations. I just want to say that this sequence, what makes it even more interesting is that it's also found in other places in the canon. And when you find, just by the way, when you find a sutta, a teaching that comes in more than one Nikaya apart, that's a very good sign. That's a really good sign that the Buddha probably actually taught this quite a bit, because when you can identify a teaching that comes across different of the different Nikayas, different collections, These collections did not come from the same place, so that it's kind of a proof that it is a pretty solid teaching. And so this is such a teaching, and that is kind of a proof that the Buddha probably put a lot of emphasis on this. And so without further ado, this is part of the Connected Discourses, Samyutta Nikaya. It's in the chapter on the factors of enlightenment, supports of awakening. And it's found in other, also in other chapters of the Connected Discourses. So it's not the only place it's found. And basically the template goes like this. It starts with awareness, sati, and then I will skip over the introduction and go really to the core of it, because I just want to keep it clear and concise. So basically started meditating like this. This meditator, this monk, has gotten inspiration from another monk and is inspired by their teaching, and now they're recollecting that teaching. We could easily say, for example, well, that person's recollecting to practice the Brahmaviharas, for example, to practice the relaxed step. And so one remembers and applies those teachings. At that time, the support of awakening of awareness is undertaken. It is being developed, and it gradually matures by development. And meditating with such awareness, one uses discernment to seek wholesome states and let go of unwholesome ones, and understand the different mental states that arise with wisdom. At that time, the support of awakening of discernment, this is Dhammavichaya, investigation also, is undertaken. It is being developed, and it comes to maturation by development. And so here, just practicing the Brahmaviharas, for example, this brings up awareness, because we are choosing that. We have some kind of an investigation. That's the recognized step. And so when we choose between states, when we choose to develop wholesome ones, then that's the investigation of states here. And we need awareness to do this. Then practicing continually, devotedly, seeking these wholesome states and letting go of unwholesome ones. Using discernment, at that time, the support of awakening of devotion is undertaken, energy, virya. It is being developed, and it comes to maturity by development. Now, as we do this continually, then joy arises. From this continual and devoted practice, high-minded joy arises, niramisapiti. And so here, this is quite obvious that when we cultivate loving kindness, when we cultivate these Brahmaviharas, when we smile, and when we let go of unwholesome mental states, distractions, anger, taking things personal, jealousy, oh, what that person said, oh, what I should have done, then we let go of all that. There's just joy arising naturally, because that's just the nature of the mind. When unwholesome states are gone, wholesome states take their place, then there's joy arising, relief. At that time, the support of awakening of joy is undertaken. It is developed, and it comes to maturity by development. Then passaddhi, relaxation or tranquility. With this mental joy, the body relaxes. And that's very interesting, isn't it? The relaxing, the letting go helps soothe the mind, helps uplift the mind with joy, but also the joy helps relax the body, relax the mind. And so these are what I call the two wings to awakening, letting go and uplifting the mind, basically. And they work together like two hands would wash each other. At that time, the support of awakening of calm or relaxation is undertaken. It is being developed, and it comes to maturity by development. With this relaxed body, the happy mind becomes collected. And here again is something that I really like to put a lot of emphasis on our retreats and teachings, is that this sequence is extremely important in understanding what kind of samadhi the Buddha taught. This in Pali is called Sukhino Chittang Samadhiyati. So the happy mind becomes collected. This is how the mind attains samadhi per se. In the text, it comes back over and over again by relaxing, letting go, uplifting the mind. The mind becomes happy. And when the mind is happy, it's not looking for other things outside. It's got happiness here and now. Why would it look outside for distractions? So it's completely content, and awareness starts to pool. And this is that collectedness. This is that samadhi. At that time, the support of awakening of collectedness is undertaken. It is being developed, and it comes to maturity by development. And finally, the crown jewel of the topic of the talk tonight, steadiness of mind. With this calm and collected mind, one steadily attends with discernment, with awareness. At that time, the support of awakening of mental steadiness is undertaken. It is being developed, and it comes to maturity by development. And so here, all of this sequence, I just really love to think about. This is the definition of Upekkha. If you're looking for the real definition of Upekkha, this is that sequence. And Upekkha, in the high-minded sense, in developing wholesome qualities, in the Buddha's teaching, in terms of bhavana, wholesome mental development, it starts with awareness and joy and right effort and tranquility. And it is rooted upon these states and collectedness. And as these states become more developed, they culminate, they bloom into this mental poise, this mental balance, this blissful steadiness of mind, which is very light, it's clear, it's uplifted. And in the Buddha's teaching, when we talk about Upekkha, this is what we're talking about. And so, isn't that beautiful? Isn't that just such a beautiful recollection to think about even? So when I discovered that, my whole understanding of this practice changed. I started to really understand, wow, this equanimity that we're meant to develop is actually very beautiful. It's rooted in joy. It's rooted in the loving kindness. It's rooted in all the Brahmaviharas. And it culminates into this blooming quality, that this crown jewel of Buddhism. And so I think this is the way that we can understand this tangibly here and now. This is really the definition of Upekkha that I like to think of anyways. And this is really helpful for us to take with us and apply it in our own daily lives and practice on and off the cushion. And it's very concrete and tangible here and now. It's quite simple, and it is a lot more uplifted than the Pali dictionary seems to put forward anyways. And so I hope this is helpful, and maybe something that you can bring home with you, with understanding, like what can I take home with me from this reflection tonight, is that, well, just remember that sequence. Just remember how this Upekkha is meant to arise, basically. And this is the Upekkha in half an hour that we've experienced at the end of the half hour of meditation that we just did. there is this more calm and balance of mind. This is it. This is just getting stronger. And remembering this sequence. And obviously, if you'd like to go deeper and experience more tangibly what that feels like, of course, coming on retreat is a really good idea. But I think as a closure here, I'd like to offer this as a reflection and perhaps open up for questions and comments so we can see what people are thinking.
Thank you so much, Bhante. So we're having some Zoom issues here and sorting out all that. And this happens to be the case on our side this time, not so much on your side. So if you guys have any questions here, feel free to ask. I think Bhante can hear us pretty well. But before that, Bhante, can I kind of recap what you said about that previous question? What Upekkha in terms of sensory experience means? If I understood you correctly, it's not tied to the higher mind, and it could come in various shapes and sizes, massages, Netflix, and all that. So we had this discussion in the chat as well, and somebody was asking whether that question was really answered. So is there anything more to add there, Bhante?
In terms of mundane kind of equanimity, yeah, I mean, there's always this translation where, for me, I was given instructions. I also take these instructions that I've gotten in the past in my meditation to remain equanimous. It's like telling someone to do something. Well, it's kind of part of that mundane, I feel, that mundane kind of equanimity, because then you're trying to control it. You're trying to force it. It's like sometimes you hear the meditation instructions like, don't move. Well, the first thing that's going to create is tension. You can tell people not to move, but then, or you can explain to them why moving is actually disturbing, activating the mind, and to try to move less and try to relax. And when the urge of moving arises, it's okay. It's okay if you move a little bit, but when the urge of moving arises, try to see what's behind it, what's in the mind. Oh, you might see there's a little bit of impatience there. Oh, maybe you can relax that. Maybe there's a little bit of tension in it. And that's actually helping cultivating the wisdom that is needed to make progress on the path. Whereas if I tell you not to move, then you're just gonna go like this. Probably actually create a lot of tension for yourself. It happened to me. And so the directions on doing the same thing with Upekkha, for example, it happened to me as well, where I was kind of forcing that equanimity, whereas things that would arise, like I would bump my toe and I would just like try to kind of like really kind of not feel. Basically, it's kind of like training not to feel almost. And so that's really disconnecting. It's not actually, it took me a while to get out of that perspective, to get out of that trench, basically, towards a more wholesome kind of understanding. And then when you start practicing, like we've just discussed, with the 7 supports of awakening, with right effort, with developing wholesome qualities, relaxing, then that mental steadiness is there. And it's quite durable, actually, because it's rooted in wisdom. It's rooted in discernment. And so whether you're on the cushion or not, you're used to understanding mental states. That's very different. And then that mental steadiness with everything that you do in life, in your sensory experiences, it remains quite well. So that's kind of transcending the sensory experiences. You might be still equanimous with the sensory experience, but the sensory equanimity is different. The sensory equanimity would come from the senses. That's why the idea of the massage, the Netflix, I don't know, and you know, mind you, these could be catalysts to help people just unwind, and then after that kind of, okay, maybe like go on the cushion and, you know, be in a better state to kind of just meditate. So it's not
right. So it's a more of a satiated state. Will that be a better summary of the sensory equanimity in some sense?
Yeah. Well, any kind of mental neutrality. I guess it's kind of a play on words, but mental neutrality or balance of mind that comes from the senses. Another thing that comes up to mind right now is, well, perhaps there's some kinds of music that you can also listen to that makes you like make your mind kind of more balanced. And that's, you know, I never kind of go against that completely. I just say that it's very limited. It just doesn't go.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the only.
Right. So we don't have to demonize that in any way. Oh. Great. So somewhat of a similar question. The transition from the first factor of enlightenment to the last factor of enlightenment, Upekkha, happens gradually, and so does the transition from the first Brahmavihara to the last Brahmavihara, which is Upekkha again, happens gradually, right? So will there is it good to think about Upekkha as a Brahmavihara, having the other Brahmaviharas kind of at the behind, you know, if needed, they can peak. Is that a good way of understanding this?
Yes, actually, that's another kind of aspect. I mean, there's such a huge spectrum of things that we could talk about around equanimity, but that's another really interesting outlook on it, because I really like to see it that, again, just like in the 7 supports of awakening, Upekkha is the last one, which is like the kind of the crown jewel. That's why I called it like that. It kind of comes at the culmination, the maturation of all these factors, and then it culminates into Upekkha. Well, it's the same thing for the Brahmaviharas. And I've talked a little bit about this last talk, is that there's 2 ways of developing the Brahmaviharas. Well, there's more than that, but then 2 main ways that are like kind of linearly from loving kindness, metta, karuna, compassion, mudita, the sympathetic joy or just joy, and then upekkha, equanimity. There's this kind of hierarchical, as it goes deeper, we can actually experience a sequence, because each of them is lighter than the other progressively. And so there's a way of practice that we can experience that, this linear sequence, but then we can also practice them individually, just for what they are, these qualities, like in daily life or whatever it is. But in the Brahmaviharas, I also like that it comes at the end where it seems to be telling us, hey, this equanimity is not meant to be indifference. It's meant to be backed by sympathetic joy. It's meant to be backed by compassion. It's meant to be backed by loving kindness. So if you fall off from that equanimity, you should only go down towards these other states that are actually kind of coarser. And if you go towards more indifference, that means, well, that probably wasn't exactly the equanimity that we're talking about in the Buddhist teaching. So,
great answer, Bhante. Great answer. So another similar question is there a distinction between neutral feeling that has no mindfulness versus neutral feeling that is connected with mindfulness and wisdom?
Yes. So that's another area where there's this understanding of neither pleasant nor unpleasant sensations, which is usually I translate it as neutral, because this is just a mouthful to say every time. neither pleasant nor unpleasant. I mean, at that level, the Buddha would say it's like if you're aware as it comes up, as it stays, and as it goes away, that neutral feeling, then you're aware, and then there's that because of that steadiness of mind, you can be aware of it as it goes through. Whereas if it's just a neutral feeling, which is not seen with awareness, again, it kind of points out to this indifference. Basically, it's kind of a non-caring, nonchalant kind of awareness, which is actually not really tied to awareness at all. It's just sinking into hindrances, and that's why they're called hindrances, is that at that point they hinder us from seeing them even. So we're not really aware of the process, we're just kind of detached, we're indifferent. So
right. Thank you so much, Bhante. And what is the difference, someone asks, between passaddhi, tranquility, and equanimity in the 7 factors of enlightenment?
yes. So as I was explaining earlier, Upekkha comes from Upekkha. So basically this term means more like onlooking steadiness of awareness, which is kind of like an evolved sati, basically. It's like a mature sati. It's much more in that sense, which it's like a constant balance of mind. Poise is another word that I like. And passaddhi is more that action of relaxation, and that's why it's tricky, because when we use the word calm, is that I like the word calm, and I like the word tranquility. And I was just contemplating on this, but the thing is, there's very few words that, when you say calm, for example, for passaddhi, the trick is that it can convey a very neutral kind of concept, where there's not really an action happening. And that's a problem in the suttas, because I mean, we could go on for a long time about this, but we call it the neutral voice. So it's in the suttas, it's always said like in the past, like having done this, he did this. Having eaten his meal, he sat down cross-legged. So it's all in the past. It's all been done. It's all having done this. It's all been done. So it kind of gives the flavor that there's nothing to do really. It gives that. And that's something that I'm trying to bring up a little bit more, is that actually there is some active principles in this teaching. You know, there are things to be done. Actually, Ajahn Jeff is one of the people that actually says that quite a bit. That there's work to be done. You know, don't think that it's all about looking at things just the way they are and that's it. You know, that this is not Buddhism. Buddhism is about wholesome mental development. We need to cultivate these states. So I really, I mean, this is a whole process in itself. So I'm leaning towards kind of that concept of relaxing, like as passaddhi, because it carries a more kind of active principle, which you can actually sink your teeth in, instead of just remaining always kind of, you know, looking at, oh yes, it's all there, it's all happening, but I'm not doing anything. So
perfect, Bhante. Perfect. So another transition here, talking of Ajahn Jeff and being active when we are practicing Buddhism, is what do we do off the cushion when we are equanimous? Do we take actions to help, but calmly and wisely? Do we just be at peace with suffering and abuse?
Yeah, I mean, I think the culmination of this upekha, this steadiness of mind, which arises from devoted meditation, devoted practice, I think it's one of the most beautiful gifts in this world. Like people, like just just your presence can affect some situations, whereas you could just be in a kind of a violent environment, or for example, I get chased by dogs here, like wild packs of dogs, quite often. Actually, I'm learning the routes here in Kalimpong in the mountains, because I'm trying to avoid certain places. The dogs get crazy sometimes. They get into packs of 10 and 12, and they just really lose their minds. Like once they start barking, like they're just, and so. And when the mind is really equanimous, it's like it's kind of contagious. You can actually go through some of these situations where you just could not, if there wasn't that kind of mental steadiness, this kind of that's why I like the term poise, because it comes from the Latin and Old French, like poids or peser, which is like weight. It has, like, the mind has some weight, you know. It doesn't get blown away by all the little things all the time. And so in like a rescue situation, in all of these things, actually, it's not equanimity, it's actually sharpness of awareness also. So you're going to pick up on a lot of cues that you probably wouldn't pick up on if, because there is heightened awareness. And by heightened awareness, I don't mean, you know, like being alert and all of this all the time, but just there is this open presence, welcoming presence that is accepting and welcoming the flow of your experience. You're not thinking about other things, you're here, you're completely here. So reflexes, wholesome reflexes especially, are much more quicker, sharper. And so it's not just equanimity, but heightened awareness, steadiness.
Thank you so much, Bhante. So we have another question, lots of questions here about this very exciting topic, although it's kind of equanimous. Can there ever be too much of a good thing? That is too much equanimity.
Too much of a good thing. Not if it's practiced properly. Not if it's practiced properly. If it's practiced improperly, it could be. Like a lot of people nowadays, because of the ways that certain teachings are understood, are warning about too much samadhi, a warning about too much jhana, for example. But that's simply not understanding really what these things are. When they're practiced properly, they are only helpful. They are a conduit to wisdom only. And Upekkha, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of using the word equanimity, because for me, it doesn't actually convey the real meaning of that word. And if too much equanimity means becoming indifferent and not caring, then we're actually not moving in the right direction. And if equanimity means mental steadiness, a clear, bright, open mind that is unshaken by experiences and can actually respond very wholesomely, very naturally, I don't think there's any such thing as too much equanimity or too much upekkha.
Right. Question in two parts, but I'll ask the first part. You mentioned apathy mistaken for equanimity. Is it similar to anhedonia, which is a sign of depression?
Yeah, exactly. We are talking here about clinical mental conditions which are diagnosed and diagnosable, and there are precursors that can tell us, and at that point that's why I liked this idea of the 100 shades or the 50 shades of equanimity, or the 1,000 masks of equanimity, because there's a lot of things that can happen. And that's why I liked that poem also, which gave a really long list of all kinds of things that actually, that's also what it can mean to be quiet or to be equanimous. So it can cover up a lot of things. And so apathy, another one that is closely associated is avolition, which is another condition very close to that. And so at that point, externally, it might seem like someone is equanimous, but it's actually, it's actually a mental condition of an incapacity of feeling emotions even. So that's kind of, yeah, it's very far from what we're practicing here.
Right. So the concept of Nibbida, which is disenchantment, which is usual translation, you might prefer another word for it, I understand. But the concept of Nibbida, or turning away from the world, sometimes that could be seen as a loss of interest in the world and a feeling of apathy.
Yeah, yeah. But there's also a gradual path, a gradual training to these teachings. And this is something that actually is really important, and that really matters. And yet, when you read the suttas, and that's one of the challenges in the Buddha's teaching for those of us who are interested in the early teachings, the direct teachings of the Buddha, there is no guide that tells you, okay, this teaching comes first, and then this teachings come after, and then this teaching comes. It's all kind of mishmash, wish-wash, you know. Throughout the suttas, you have all kinds of teachings from different levels, and some of them are not meant to even be heard by people who are beginning, or people that are, you know, just starting their first steps on this practice. Because I mean, we can approach that topic of Nibbida, but I would personally just be careful and use a kind of a diluted a bit, because what could be kind of clear for some advanced meditators or some seasoned practitioners could seem very kind of bland and harsh to other people. So I like to see, you know, actually, Bharat, in that sequence, for example, in the transcendental dependent origination, like the Upanishad Sutta, that's where one of the places that comes, this Nibbida.
Right.
Nibbida actually also, in that sequence, there's no viveka. Viveka doesn't come. And I find that Nibbida and viveka are very, very, very close in meaning, and very almost interchangeable, because they're kind of they both mean to detach, to kind of let go. And so usually I kind of call Nibbida just like letting go completely, or just this kind of turning away, getting wary of something that is like at least a little bit diluted down. Like this passion, disenchantment is kind of, it doesn't have a good rep in our contemporary world right now. So I'm careful with these terms.
Right. So Nibbida, you said, is very similar to viveka, which is seclusion. So in that sense, the mind leans towards seclusion if somebody has Nibbida.
So again, that's another word, that viveka comes actually from the root which means kind of cutting off, or like detaching. So that's exactly what I was alluding to earlier in the talk, is that somehow we have all these Pali terms, and there's a lot less words in Pali, by the way, than in English, that we've stuck the same English word to. We have like seclusion comes back like on 4 or 5 words. And so it becomes very, very narrow and very fast at some point. And viveka actually means more like letting go. It means detaching, like, okay, like it's synonym with nekkhamma, basically, like letting go, renouncing. Seclusion is more like, there's another word for that is closer, I feel, is patisallana. Patisallana is actually more like a physical kind of seclusion, like we would have it in the English language. That's my own personal take on this. So yeah.
Thank you, Bhante. A lot of questions and a lot of interesting and intriguing and insightful answers from you. Can I wrap up the session by inviting you to share merits with us?
Yes, of course. Okay. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share these merits that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty powers, share these merits of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu. And thank you, dear Bharat. It was lovely to be invited to be part of your Sangha. Lots of beautiful people and smiles. It's been a privilege, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, Bhante. I would like to just make a few announcements now. If you go to metacenter.com events, you will find a lot of things happening for us in the next few months. We have the retreat at Karuna Center next month, August 19th and 20th. And we have the Metta Convention, the last whole week of September and October 1st. And we have a retreat by Bhante Ananda and Venerable Bhante Ananda as well in November at Karuna Center. So look into the Metta Center website and go under the events, and you can find a lot of other interesting stuff as well, like the next week, Wednesday session, which might interest you. So tune in and find peace and joy with us. Thank you so much, Bhante. And it's really a privilege to invite you and listen to the Dhamma. Thank you so much.
Thank you.